Before I get into what I want to talk about, I want to acknowledge that today, for myself at least, is a national holiday. This is the 59th anniversary of the arrival on Earth of my firstborn son, Scott Macaulay Small. He's somewhere in an airplane up in the sky, flying back to New Jersey, and hopefully I will be able to wish him happy birthday later on today. I thought I'd talk a little bit about what it was like to be 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, maybe 13 years old, from 1942 to 1945 or 46. The Second World War, as it was observed at 1180 Rubio Street, Altadena, California. My parents purchased that house in the spring of 1942. And it wasn't terribly long thereafter that my father literally disappeared as he entered the Army of the United States. That left at home my mother, Eileen, my great aunt, Annie Maud Young, and we three children, Tiny, Joan, and Richard. And for those of you who want complete accuracy, in the early 1940s, my sister's name was spelled Joan. Later, after my father returned from the war, and she learned that he had selected her name and my brother's name from the War of Roses, she found out that Joan in the War of Roses is spelled Jone. And so my father went to court and Joan's name was changed to Jone. In any event, the house that my parents bought used to belong to the Nash family, as in the Nash automobile. 2 stories, 5 bedrooms upstairs, 2 bathrooms upstairs, a half a bath on the first floor, and then a basement with a maid's bedroom and a bathroom. The only maid that we had was dear and beloved Annie Maud. It came with the property was a 1/4 acre, and it came with a magnificent collection of fruit trees. Any fruit you could imagine was growing there, and in plenty. And we started out by doing what everybody else in the neighborhood and all around the country was doing then. We planted a victory garden, largely composed of vegetables and leaf vegetables. Although I knew it was going on, neither I nor any of the members of the family seemed to suffer from it, but there was something called rationing. And my mother had a ration book with little stamps in it that she would have to give to the butcher or give to the grocer. And my mother was always, in my vision, an extraordinarily attractive woman. So when mother encountered Harry Overson at Crown Meats on Lake Avenue in Altadena, California, mother never seemed to have any trouble getting meat. Gasoline for cars was rationed, and you were given a little sticker that you wore in the left-hand corner of the windshield. An A, a B, or a C. A C was for people with real influence. A B was for people who thought they had influence. And the C was for us and everybody else. But Bill Tannehill and his gasoline station always provided enough gas for mother and our one car. So I really don't remember that we suffered. If there was anything I hated about the food, it was that there was the responsibility of us kids to color the margarine. margarine came in a big, heavy plastic bag. It was white. And you had a dye, an orange dye that somehow was either in the bag or you put it in the bag. And then you spent a long time squeezing the bag and squeezing the bag until its color was approximately that of butter. I don't remember when we stopped eating real butter. I don't remember when we started eating real butter. But I know that that was the part of rationing that most annoyed me. At mealtime, because I was the eldest child and I was a male, I was allowed to sit at the head of the table in my father's chair. My mother sat to my left. My sister sat to my right. And Auntie Maud sat next to Mother, and Richard sat next to Joan. You might obviously, when my father returned, I had to surrender my place at the head of the table and was very, very excited to be able to do that. So time goes on, and the only thing that there may be two things that we noticed. One was that our father was gone. The other was that almost everybody else's father was gone. There were not a lot of adult males around. That ultimately led to my getting a driver's license when I was 15, because they lowered the driving age so that young men, teenagers, could be employed to drive. My father came home at least once that I can recall. I think by then he may have been a major, and he had an assistant, a first lieutenant, whose last name was Rogers. Don't remember his first name, but his nickname was Buck. And Buck was a hoot. He would tell wonderful stories, probably none of them true, about all of the courageous things that he and my father did when they were together in Texas. Father then disappeared to London, to Italy, where he went through parachute training with the British and with the Yugoslav guerrillas from Mihailovic. Mihailovic was competing with Marshal Tito for control of Yugoslavia. And then Father ended up in New Delhi, India, then on Ceylon, and obviously somehow ended up in Thailand toward the end of the war. But the visit with Lieutenant Rogers was so impressible that we decided to establish a military camp on the front lawn of our home. And we put up a flagpole, and we would put the American flag up each morning and take it down at night. And we had 3 pup tents out in the yard, which we'd gotten at Army surplus. Interesting that they had Army surplus so early in the war, but they did. And from India, my father mailed home 4 bush jackets. The bush jackets had embroidered on them the shoulder pad of the China Burma India Theater. It had other markings reflecting the Army, and the coats came in 3 sizes: an adult size with a major embroidered on the epaulets. Then a much smaller size was captain. The next size down was a first lieutenant. and last was a second lieutenant. Poor Richard, the youngest, was commissioned by me, a second lieutenant. My sister was commissioned a first lieutenant. Naturally, I was a captain, and Auntie Maud became the camp commander as a major. And we would stand at attention in front of our tents while the flag was raised and lowered, and that was pretty much what the war was like for us. Eventually, Father would send Mother lots of letters, all handwritten, and sometimes she would share part of the letters with us. Sometimes, if we were very lucky, we would each get an individual letter from our father, and I still have at least one of them in my possession somewhere. Father's handwriting was extraordinarily distinct, but surprisingly easy to decipher. We went on this way, and then all of a sudden, in late 1945, Father came home, and not surprisingly, I suppose, since he wasn't a great fan of war, Camp Roberts was disassembled and was retired. If I remember correctly, Dad reported that Buck had a penchant for getting in trouble, and that he had gotten in such severe trouble that he had been court-martialed and given a substantial prison sentence, and was handcuffed and put on a plane to fly home to the United States to go to a federal military penitentiary. He was spared that ignominy when the plane crashed on the way home and everyone was killed. And Father was devastated at the loss of Buck, went to Texas to visit his widow, and we all felt real grumpy and sad that Buck Rogers had left our lives. But that pretty much describes what it was like. I think they required us to blacken our windows at night because the Japanese might see us from offshore. I'm not completely clear about it, but it was something that we were all willing to do. And we saved tin foil and string, which we donated for the war effort. But otherwise, the whole experience was sort of benign. There were no, we weren't bombed or anything of that nature. And it was just Dad was gone and we never knew for sure where he was. But happily, he came home.